Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of AI and Oats, which is my daily show where I talk about some AI news and answer some AI questions. But firstly, if you're new here, welcome. Let me introduce myself. My name is Alistair. This is my YouTube channel where I teach Claude Code and Codex for knowledge work and business use cases, but I also run an AI consulting and training business called Ducks. And so if you want to own a business and you'd be interested in implementing AI to grow your revenue, grow your business, feel free to get in touch through the link in the description. And then alongside that, I have a school community where I share the actual kind of skills and setups I use for Claude Code and Codex, and the link for that is in the description too. But now that the preliminaries are out of the way, let's jump into the questions. So, some of you who have seen other episodes will know, but I'll just explain it again. Basically, the way this works is during the day, there's a Codex automation I have that goes and kind of scrapes various Reddit forums, news sites, that sort of thing, finds interesting questions or articles about AI, then puts them into this slide deck for me, and then I come and answer them. Or just often end up going off on tangents. But let's get started. ChatGPT Codex workflow for when starting a new chat. Right, well, a little bit grammatically questionable, but I assume the question is asking what is like the workflow for starting a new chat in Codex. I mean, I guess it's fairly simple. What you want to do is like select a folder. So in Codex, the way it works, let me see if I can show you. So I mean, we're in Codex here, and just to start a new chat, just click like this little button up here, and then what you want to do is select a folder from here. So this is like the project within like Codex has projects, and this is how they will then appear in your sidebar, or how all your chats will be like compiled into one project. Or if you don't want to work in a project, you can just kind of do like a normal chat. I guess just if you want to just brainstorm something or something along those lines, then this is like where you're going to select, you know, how autonomous you want it to be. I almost always run it on approve for me, because that's like Claude Code's auto mode, which means most of the time it will do most actions, but if it thinks something is particularly unsafe, then it won't do it. And that gives you like a nice level of autonomy where you can feel you can send it off and it can do tasks, but you can kind of trust that it's not going to do anything crazy. If you're a bit more, you know, risk averse, then you can do ask for approval, but it'll feel slower. And if you just don't care, then do full access. This is like selecting the effort level, which I do consider, you know, I think that's an important part of starting a chat, like the chat start workflow, if you will, that we're discussing. Choose a model, running it. This is like going to extra high at the moment, Sol on extra high. For most things, I'd probably use like medium or high, just in terms of like managing limits. But I would use 5.6 Sol for most like of the interactive tasks I do. Some automations and stuff I'll run on like Terra or something lighter. Or a lot of automations I actually run on Sol Lite. But anyway, so you choose a project here, which you like. If you want to start a new project, you just call it that, and then you can link it to your folders in your computer because you work within a folder. And then the other thing is you can either like work locally or in the cloud, or I don't know what Codex Web is, to be honest. I never really used that. And then if it's connected to a GitHub repo, you can select the branch or like the work tree. And so that's how you start it. And then I'd say like just start it by kind of brain dumping. Like have a task that you generally want to achieve, brain dump into it, and then do what a lot of people term like reverse prompting, which is say like, okay, knowing these things and like knowing what you know about me, because it's working in a folder, so it will have that context, like how can you help me with this task, and then get it to ask you questions and plan with you. If you really want to plan something like a big build, you can go into plan mode there. A lot of the time, I do use plan mode sometimes, but a lot of the time I will just kind of brainstorm with it, and it kind of knows to discuss and plan before building stuff, or because it has the context and understanding of like my workflows. A lot of the time maybe I'm resuming something that was worked on previously, and so the like logs of that will be within this folder. So I'm not always in plan mode. I'm usually only in plan mode if I'm kind of starting like a new discrete project, whereas most of the time I will not necessarily be in plan mode, but I'll tell it like write a spec as we're going, or like write out a plan and then show it to me and we can edit it. So it's kind of like a quasi plan mode, but not exactly the official plan mode. But anyway, yeah, that's the thing. That's like my workflow. And then like, yeah, just use dictation tools as well. Like if I'm on the phone, I'll dictate with this. If I'm on my computer, I'll use Whisperflow. But yeah, it's fairly simple. That's my workflow for getting started with a new Codex session. Right, on to the next question. Every agent company should be partnering with AgentMail. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, so AgentMail is a company. It went through YC, like, I don't know, like last year or something. And I have used it a little bit because I ended up getting some like free credits for it. So I used it back in the day, like quite a while ago. Like at least 6 months ago or something, I feel, with OpenClaw for a bit, and I thought it was okay. One thing I found is that, I think it's pretty good because you do want to give your bots, like your agents, email addresses so that you can create accounts for them in some things. One thing I found was that when I would try to sign up for some accounts using an AgentMail email address, it told me, like, no, you can't do that because we know that you're not a human because you're using an AgentMail email address. I think, like, that. I'm pretty sure that happened. Maybe there was some other, maybe it wasn't the email address causing that issue. Maybe there was something else that, like, alerted the system to the fact that this was an AI agent. However, the idea of sending stuff to the AgentMail was useful because I could just send something to the AgentMail and then tell OpenClaw, like, I have this on AgentMail. I now don't really use OpenClaw anymore. I use Hermes a bit. I haven't set up a Hermes account with AgentMail because my free credits ran out, basically. I'm not sure if I will. And so for my workflows, it's almost more useful to have Hermes access like my own email and stuff. I am aware that that is probably not absolute best practice. So to be fair, at the moment it doesn't really have access to any form of my email. It doesn't have email access yet. I haven't set that up. I am thinking about how I'm going to do it. But yeah, it is a useful thing in terms of, like, I do think, basically fundamentally, I do think that you probably want to have accounts for your agents, and therefore you do want to give them email addresses. I guess maybe you can give them Gmail addresses, but actually there's a limit to like how many accounts you can set up on one phone number or one email. So yeah, I think AgentMail, I definitely think solving like contact information for agents will be a very big thing. Like, quite frankly, I think like you probably want to give agents, like, I don't know if phone numbers is the right thing, but some way to call them individually as well. I feel like that's where we're going. Since voice modes and that sort of thing are coming out, I want to be able to jump on a call with one of my agents or with several of my agents and be able to delegate tasks to them in that way, or have real-time phone calls with them. So you need to sort out something like that as well. But yeah, AgentMail is pretty good, and therefore I do think, yeah, I guess the argument here is that, like, agent companies need to be partnering with AgentMail, which I guess means if you kind of provide an agent that does something, like an accounting agent for a company or something, almost like agents as a service, if that's an industry, which I think arguably it is, then I guess the people who use that agent need to have a way to contact it and like forward it emails, and that's when AgentMail would be useful. So yeah, no, I think it's definitely something, like, yeah, it is a thing to consider, that you do want to set up accounts, separate accounts for your AI agents. And AgentMail, I have used it and it does work, but I don't use it currently, but that's not to say I will not return to using it. What small businesses want from their bank's AI? That's an interesting question. I mean, I guess it would be quite useful. I imagine a lot of them are going to want stuff like automated accounting, in terms of like tracking revenues and costs and expense management. I think one thing I would say is that, like, I feel like banks, because finance is such a regulated industry, especially in the UK and stuff, their technology adoption is so slow. Like, I mean, even if you look at the mobile apps of a lot of big banks, they're still quite rubbish compared to a lot of apps. And I think AI adoption is therefore also going to be similarly slow, especially because of, like, AI to work well needs like really good, or not really, like a very clean data layer. And I think that so many of these banks, so many big banks, like, you know, like Barclays or something like that, I expect that they have very, very messy data internally that has been built up over essentially several like antiquated old systems remaining in place longer than they should have done, and therefore over like numerous waves of data migration, I assume it's gotten quite messy. And therefore I think that a lot of big banks, and I mean this probably applies across industries, but a lot of industries where big enterprise companies exist but have a kind of messy data layer are going to have to do huge data migration projects before they can actually implement AI effectively, which is going to set them way back. So, and I think the issue for them now is that if I were to start a bank today, which is not what I'm planning to do, but I would do everything like, I think this is the obvious thing, you build an AI native bank where everything is kind of agent managed and AI first. And so you avoid having that messy data layer because your AI come up with like the schema for storing data and everything like that. So you get a clean data layer that can then be managed by AI. And the point of that is therefore like AI features for your clients are much more possible. And so I don't know exactly what features you would integrate, but I would suggest something like, so I don't know, I guess RAMP, not that I know tons of what RAMP does, but I think it's an AI native finance company, as in like company finance. They manage that using agents and that sort of thing, and like monitor spendings, help you find revenues and cut expenses. So I imagine that's the kind of thing small businesses want, is like automated accounting, which I suppose you could do by tracking business bank accounts in terms of like revenue coming in, expenses going out, presumably spotting like expenses leaking, or not leaking, but like, unnecessary expenses or that sort of stuff to help with margins. Those sorts of things. Potentially, well, I don't know if it would be kind of like illegal in terms of data privacy, but theoretically you could have, or maybe this is not something that like a bank's AI feature would monitor, but more like a payment company's AI feature would monitor. Is like you could essentially help people. I'm not talking about dynamic pricing, but you could probably tell a business if their pricing are like, if they're significantly underpricing themselves compared to the market, because if you have their competitors' data. However, while that is theoretically possible and would probably be something businesses would want to know, I don't know whether that is technically allowed or if that's a breach of like data privacy. However, my point is that kind of regardless of all these things, I think that you are not going to be getting any great AI features. Well, maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic. I expect big enterprise banks are not necessarily going to have amazing AI features anytime soon. I feel like smaller kind of neobanks and that sort of thing in all likelihood will, and I think some of them probably do already. And I think the real exciting thing will be when we, like the current AI native banks, which are probably just starting to emerge now, will have the best sort of AI features. And then there will be a point of convergence where these like AI native banks are going to have whatever 10% of the headcount and be doing the same kind of, like their EBITDA will be matching like big banks, and at that point the big banks will panic and go, oh, we are so far behind, we have to update our technology in terms of this AI thing. And then they'll just buy the little banks, or well, they won't be little at that point, they'll buy the AI native banks, or they'll have to adapt themselves. And that's, I guess, when everything will turn, and there'll probably be a very big jump in AI enabled banking. That's my expectation. When that happens, I don't know. Probably a few years from now. So I think you'll see some banks like, I guess things like Monzo, that sort of thing, if Monzo counts as a neobank, which I think it probably does. But yeah, so I think your neobanks, and then what will be like your new AI native banks, will have pretty good AI features, and then eventually they will match the output. Like they'll have good AI features and good kind of internally AI enabled operations that allow them to have better margins and smaller headcount. They will then grow, and once they reach parity, more or less, with the big banks, that's when I think there will be an absolute or that's when I think it will necessitate a sort of change in the way banking, or the extent to which banking is AI enabled. Whatever that is, 2 to 3 years, I don't necessarily know. That's my theory, though. Yeah, that probably went on a bit longer to make a simple point than I needed to, but hopefully you get the idea. Offering zero data retention for frontier models. I think this is important, because I think it's interesting, because certainly sticking to the idea of enterprises, like a lot of big enterprises are going to be I think are probably skeptical of like using or not necessarily skeptical, but they're aware that they have to be extremely careful like with their usage of AI models, like including especially things like banking, where it is, as we said, so regulated. They can't necessarily have like that data going back to Anthropic, back to OpenAI. So I know you have like the enterprise accounts for those frontier models have different like data guardrails and stuff in terms of what's stored or what's retained. But I think that's also that exact same reason, privacy and control, is probably a reason in many ways that local models seem more attractive for those sorts of things. And I mean, the local models are good now, and so if you're a big enterprise company, you know, maybe you probably would lean more towards like using local models, or like exactly open-way models, and then you can even kind of post-train them more on your own data for your own purposes and that sort of thing. So I guess to keep up and offer an equally, or not necessarily an equally attractive alternative, but like a competitive offering with those local models, the frontier labs do have to offer you this kind of extremely safe, from a data privacy perspective, usage of their models, because in many ways, you're still going to get the best intelligence probably from the frontier labs, so it is ideal to be using their models, but it's also more expensive. And if you're really concerned about regulation and data privacy, then you know they have to offer you something that really allays those fears. And so I imagine this is kind of an effort from OpenAI in this case to stay competitive against using local models in terms of a safety perspective, from the enterprise perspective. Maybe I've misinterpreted that, and you know, I don't necessarily have loads of experience being the head of AI implementation at any big enterprise companies, so perhaps I've, you know, misdiagnosed their cybersecurity concerns, but I feel like that's the way I see it, is that there are a lot of attractive elements to using local models if you care very deeply and have a lot of sensitive information, and so the frontier labs need to provide some sort of offering that matches that level of privacy. Slack wants to drag AI coding out of the terminal and into the group chat. I feel like I covered a similar thing in a different episode, and my take on it was like, yes, that kind of makes sense. However, I don't know exactly how they would suggest doing it, because one thing I do think is like, if you have loads of people, what the conclusion I came to in the other episode was that I think it makes sense at the planning stage, or like the ideation stage, to have a group chat with your agents in it. Everyone can chime in, say ideas, but then ultimately you have to end that group chat with the agent saying like, here's the plan I'm going to execute, is everyone happy with it? And then once everyone's happy with it, execute it. But I think at the point of execution, if you constantly have different people steering it while it's trying to execute, that is going to lead you to worse results, is my take, because that is just going to confuse it. It's going to cause like contradictions and stuff. And so I'm not entirely against the idea. I feel like you probably need to be quite sensible and think about the workflows you're building in terms of like collaborative vibe coding, if you want to call it that, and actually think about when it makes sense to have multiple people having an input versus when it makes sense for the agent to be left to its own devices, perhaps with one manager of it, and then for the other people to return for more input, because I think you do want to be careful about kind of confusing it. In terms of everyday usefulness and saving time, Codex and Claude Code are very capable of doing the thing where you ask them to fill out the forms that I got an email about and blah blah blah. Yes, I agree. They are extremely good at like day-to-day tasks, especially like my Codex and Claude Code are hooked up to like my WhatsApp and my email and everything, and I can just say, oh, so and so send me send me a form, fill it out. Or I was working on something like a voice guide, helping one of my clients build a voice guide that wrote in their voice, and Claude actually decided that it would take it upon itself to go find all their kind of like blog material, YouTube material, LinkedIn posts, and create a bank of example voice guides. It just decided that this was a high leverage task to do because it realized I hadn't got around to doing it yet. So it decided it as like my daytime operator, which decides to do high leverage tasks automatically. It decided that's what it would do, which was very good. And then the next day I got an email from the same client saying, here are some of like my favorite pieces of writing and some more pieces of writing. And so it's very easy. I was just like to Claude, okay, great, so and so has just sent me an email with some more pieces of writing. Just go like pull those files and update the voice guide accordingly. Never had to leave the interface of Claude Code to like go to my email, click download, go to another thing, drag it from the folder to upload it into Claude Code. You know, it's very simple and it's very good about that. Other things like, filling out forms, like I've definitely had to fill out forms before. It's just like, so like I got, I would say like I got an email with this Google form, help me brainstorm the ideas and responses, and then we'll do that sort of thing. Very useful for like sending calendar invites, just organizing my own calendar. A lot of all those admin tasks, which are just a hassle. Claude Code and Codex are very good at doing those. It's very good at doing other things as well, but certainly those things, very good at doing those. Alright, so I think that will wrap it up for today. Hopefully some useful pieces of information in there. I know a lot of it was quite kind of banking oriented, but I am interested in banking as an industry and how it will change with AI. So I would actually be interested to hear, if other people have interesting thoughts about how banking will be affected by AI. But yeah, hopefully you found some of that useful. If you did, please feel free to subscribe. And just to mention it again, if you own or run a business and you're interested in implementing AI effectively, feel free to get in touch. Likewise, if you're a knowledge worker of any form, any level, don't have to own or run a business, but you're just interested in learning how to use Codex or Claude Code better, then feel free to get in touch about helping you build out your AI operating system in that. We also have a school community, and the link for that is in the description too. So thanks for watching everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.